been scarred by the hardship and uncertainty of pandemic.
We hear the voice of the prophet calling us as people of God to be repairers of the broken places in our communities.
In these days when the sting of racial injustice has been particularly painful,
We follow in the way of the Messianic healer, seeking to restore the breath of life to every beloved child of God.
we have walked in the valleys of grief and loss, of loneliness and distress. On this long journey, hopelessness has threatened to overtake us.
Yet divine love never abandons us. The promise of divine renewal accompanies us, even in the valleys.
The voice of God calls out to us this day, individually and collectively, calling us beyond our self-imposed limits out into the streets.
To be about the work in which our God is already engaged, to be those who repair, restore, and renew.
Friends, our opening music this morning is actually a sneak peek to one part of tomorrow morning's worship. It is an anthem of curated voices of many people from across our conference. The visuals are from the holy ground that we have been called to steward at Horton Center. Please enjoy our anthem, All Are Welcome.
Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely all are welcome in this place.
We begin our morning by hearing these words for our annual meeting theme, Scripture, Isaiah 58, 9 through 12. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and the Holy One will say, Here I am. If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like the noonday. The Lord will guide you continuously and satisfy your needs in parched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water, whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall rise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach and restorer of streams to live in. Amen.
Friends, may we gather our hearts and souls together in the spirit of prayer. Will you pray with me? O Holy One, we gather this day as your church, but not in the normal way that we gather ourselves when we are near one another around a table gathered in the same building. We do the work of your church differently this day, and it challenges us, and yet it is still very much your work. We will hear your voice this day. We will consider how our call is for us to respond by stretching ourselves both in how we are as church, but also stretching ourselves by taking our ministry out into the street. This is the work you have set before us. And even while there is some physical distance between us, our spirits are linked and we hear your call. We pray for our gathering this day that we might hear your voice of wisdom and be guided by it. And we know that even as we gather this day, so do our Akama partners in Zimbabwe as they have their own type of gathering in order to elect a new president. We pray for them as well, that their discernment might be faithful and might be in keeping with where you would lead them in their call to the future. So be with us, be with our Akama partners, be with all of your church. For indeed, there is much for us to do in our churches and do in the streets where you have set us. This we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Carolyn Keilig, a member of First Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Hopkinton, and I am your conference president. Welcome to the 2020 annual meeting of the New Hampshire Conference, United Church of Christ. I call the 219th annual meeting of the gathered conference of the New Hampshire Conference of the United Church of Christ to order. And while we do not have an official report from our registrar available at this time, unless there is dissent, I declare by observation of panelists and delegates and attendees logged onto the Zoom webinar that we do have a quorum present. An official registrar's report will be offered after the morning break. We have a number of announcements, and I'd like to begin by saying that I would like to acknowledge the phenomenal response we have had to the connecting sessions for this year's annual meeting. Many of those sessions were conducted as webinars instead of a Zoom meeting due to the large attendance numbers, ranging anywhere from 30 to almost 80. As a reminder, there are still 2 connecting sessions to come. These are conversations with the conference minister, and one is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, and the second one will occur on Wednesday evening. As this year's annual meeting is being conducted entirely online, we remind you that all documents needed for the meeting are available on the nhcucc.org conference website under Conference Ministries 2020 Annual Meeting. You were provided with information on how to access and/or download them during the registration process, and you can see all the information right now on the screen where to go. In addition to the Zoom webinar, we are live streaming our event today on the Conference New Hampshire NHC UCC YouTube channel. Please complete the brief evaluation survey that will be sent to you following this meeting. We appreciate your feedback as your input assists the planning committee when it begins planning for the next annual meeting. Later this morning, we will be electing new members of the Board of Directors and Nominating Committee. This information can be found in the Nominating Committee report, along with information on those individuals asked to serve on conference ministries and as General Synod delegates. The annual meeting worship team did a phenomenal job and is offering a pre-recorded service that may be watched in its entirety tomorrow, Sunday, October 18th, or at your convenience. At the heart of worship will be a sermon delivered by the Reverend Michael Kane and an anthem created by the conference-wide virtual choir, which we just heard. As an alternative, you may also access individual pieces of the service to use as best suits the needs of your local congregation, or you may watch it individually. All the information about this worship service and the related video, audio, and text files can be found on the nhcucc.org conference website under Conference Ministries 2020 Annual Meeting, and that's tomorrow. We ask that you consider accessing our online donation portal to make a contribution to support the mission and ministries of the New Hampshire Conference United Church of Christ. You may also mail your contributions to NHCUCC 140 Sheep Davis Road, Pembroke, New Hampshire 03275, with a memo noting this is your annual meeting offering. All votes for this year's meeting will be accomplished using Zoom webinar polling. At this time, we will have a practice vote to ensure everyone is familiar with how to use the polling feature. I now invite Reverend Gordon Rankin, New Hampshire Conference United Church of Christ Conference Minister, to assist you with the instructions for our practice vote. As soon as Gordon unmutes, we will begin.
That was just bound to happen. Good morning, everyone. As we prepare for our annual meeting this morning, is obviously going to happen differently than our in-person meetings have. The voting procedures are written out in our standing rules, which we will act to adopt as part of our consent agenda in just a few moments. However, we felt it was important that we take a few moments with you, and for some of you, this will even be again, because we want you to get a feel for how this will happen before we actually take a vote. So let me start by offering my apologies. I said something at the end of our orientation, and I want to say I now at least believe that you cannot alter your names as we had asked you to do. please don't worry about that. The one request I would have of you is if you see your name listed differently than you actually registered your name. So if you're using somebody else's device or such, please write that into the question and answer piece just so we can keep track. Beyond that, please don't worry about changing your name. So let me start by saying a word about Zoom webinar and the way in which it functions. For those of you who are used to the Zoom meeting format, with all the Brady Bunch boxes across the screen, this will seem a little different. First of all, general attendees cannot be seen, so you can feel free to hang out in your robe and slippers if you want, and no one will know. Additionally, your microphone will automatically be set off. If you speak to a motion or ask a question, when called upon by the moderator, your microphone will be activated by the webinar hosts. For this webinar, the Q&A and raise hand functions are available to you. However, the chat function is not. Our voting today will take place via Zoom polls. When the moderator calls for a vote, all delegates participating via Zoom webinar on a desktop, laptop, tablet, or smartphone will see a poll pop up on their screens. Delegates are asked to respond by selecting their answer from the list on the screen. Those who have been granted voice without vote and who are attending via Zoom webinar, you will also see the poll pop up on your screen. However, we ask that you abstain from voting. Webinar is capable of providing us a full report list of every vote, so we will be able to seek out and correct any abnormalities that may occur. There will be a 2-minute period for voting. You will most likely, in most of our votes, see a 2-minute clock counting down, and then you will hear a wonderful disembodied voice telling you 15 seconds remain. So you know how much time you have left in the voting period. When the poll has concluded, the results will be announced. It is very important to note that Zoom polls only allows for 1 vote per device. If you have multiple delegates in your household, you will each need to be on your own device in order to vote. Working out voting for those who are connecting with us by Zoom webinar through telephone, the audio only version, has been one of our greatest challenges these past few months. We can easily assess how many people are connected by telephone in that audio only format. I looked a few minutes ago and we had 2 among us. If a vote passes or fails by a larger number than those on the telephone audio only, those 2, or if there are more, the correct number at the time, the moderator will declare the vote complete without counting the telephone audio only votes. However, if the vote is close, separated by less than the number of telephone audio only participants, the moderator will pause, hold a roll call vote, voice vote of those connected by telephone prior to announcing the outcome of the vote. All procedural items, things that would come to a microphone if we were holding an in-person meeting, will be handled via our Q&A box. Please take a moment to locate that button on your device. If you have a procedural item, please type what your procedural item is in the Q&A, and then please press the raise your hand button so that we can more easily identify you to give you permission to speak. Please type exactly what you wish to do in the Q&A box. I wish to speak to the motion. I wish to speak against the motion. I second the motion. Point of order, I wish to ask a question, followed by your question. Point of order, I wish to close debate. Point of order, I wish to make an amendment. If you are making an amendment, the full amendment needs to be typed into the Q&A. However, you may first note that you wish to make the amendment and send that to us so you get yourself timely into our queue, and then type the full amendment and send that to us as well. Please remember, if you are to speak to the gathered assembly, just like when we are in person, we ask you to begin by introducing yourself by name and church. Now, we know this is a whole lot of information and we are doing things in a new way. Please remember that we have technology stewards available to you throughout our meeting to assist you with figuring out how to do what you want to do. So friends, it is time to practice. For all our business votes, there will be two options: voting in favor of the motion or voting against the motion. Those abstaining from these votes will not vote simply by not answering the polling question. For our practice today, though, we are going to have a little fun and give you a few more options than just two. So you may choose the one that is most appropriate for you. James Allen, can we launch our practice vote?
Polling will close in 15 seconds.
At this time, I want to announce the votes. And I do want to say, for some reason, I'm not seeing the numbers and I think I might need to be made host. I'm just sharing that. So at this time, it looks like our winners are those who are the most people voted for Talk to Animals at 30%. We have a close Be Able to Fly, came in at 28%. We have, oh, okay, I have my numbers, thank you. So 40 of us voted for Talk to Animals, followed by Be Able to Fly, 38, Be Invisible Whenever You Want, 27 of us, 23, Read Minds, and 6, Superhuman Strength. And I say that we all have our own superpowers. Thank you for voting. At this time, I would encourage you to use the question and answer feature, the Q&A found at the bottom of your screen, to put forward any questions you have regarding the voting process using Zoom webinar polls.
I see one question at the moment from Elizabeth. Elizabeth, we'll give you a direct answer since it's a specific question that doesn't apply to everyone.
And I can say yes, because I tell her so. Okay. So some technical questions.
Yeah, and I think that second question is probably one that should go to our one of our tech stewards, because I don't know if we can handle that from where we are. So please consult with one of our tech stewards.
I'm not seeing any more questions regarding how to use the Q&A feature for voting. And so I think we will go forward with our annual meeting. The work of the conference throughout the year and the preparation of this meeting require substantial effort on the part of volunteers. So please turn your attention to the screen as we let you know who these people are and recognize them for their effort. We also recognize our honored guest. So we're going to begin with our conference officers. And then also acknowledge those who have been serving this year on the board of directors. This has been a really challenging year for so many of us, and we are so grateful for those who serve as our conference staff. We also want to thank our consultants for the special services. And those who served on our annual meeting planning committee. I am very grateful for those who have served on our annual meeting worship planning team. They've done a fantastic job, and I hope you all find the link tomorrow and enjoy the beautiful worship service they have put together for us. And then thank you in particular for those who are, for special appreciation, those who are working for us today or who are volunteering for us today to make sure that things can go as smooth as possible. It is our pleasure to have with us today a number of special guests to our annual meeting. And so we are grateful to have Mr. Harry Pate serving as our parliamentarian today. Hi, Harry, thank you. And I would like to welcome the Reverend Michael Kane, our keynote speaker for today. Hi, Michael. I also would like to introduce the Reverend Dr. David Felton, who is serving as our Bridge Associate Conference Minister during Reverend Richard Slater's sabbatical. The minutes of last year's meeting, as approved by the Board of Directors acting on behalf of the gathered conference on November 16th, 2019, have been posted on the conference website. I now call upon Reverend Carlos Jahala Straight, pastor of the First Congregational Church of Pelham, United Church of Christ, and chair of our annual meeting planning committee, to present the consent agenda.
A consent agenda is a device that allows a gathered assembly to act on several pieces of usually organized business in one vote. An affirmative vote for the consent agenda is an affirmative vote for every piece of business included in it. Prior to the motion on the consent agenda, any piece of business may be removed from it and handled separately by the request of one delegate. If there is no such request, then the gathered assembly consents to dealing with all of the business placed on the consent agenda as one. Our consent agenda for today consists of 3 pieces of business: granting clergy serving in a local church of the New Hampshire Conference who do not yet have ministerial standing in an association of the New Hampshire Conference of the United Church of Christ, and that special guests a voice without vote for this meeting. Adopting the proposed standing rules for the meeting as posted on the conference website. Adopting the proposed agenda program for the day for this meeting as proposed on the conference website.
Sorry about that. Is there a request from any delegate to have a piece of business removed from the consent agenda? If so, please state that request in the Q&A box. Carlos, I'm not seeing any.
Then on behalf of the annual meeting planning committee, I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
It is moved that we accept the consent agenda, granting clergy serving in a local church of the New Hampshire Conference who do not have ministerial standing in an association of the New Hampshire Conference of the United Church of Christ, and that special guests be granted voice without vote for this meeting, adopting the proposed standing rules as written, the proposed agenda for this meeting as written. Since this meeting comes from a committee, it does not require a second. So before I ask if there's any discussion, I just want to remind everyone that if you want to speak to or for this motion or against it, or raise a point of order, you need to raise your hand and then type it in the Q&A. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I ask you to watch for the webinar poll on your screen. This will be your first opportunity to use our online voting mechanism for official voting and official business. The question is on the motion to accept the consent agenda. Those in favor, answer the polling question yes. Those opposed, answer the polling question no. And those abstaining, including those with voice but not vote, simply do not respond to the polling question. Those abstaining are reminded that under Robert's Rules of Order, you can't vote abstain. To abstain is to do nothing. It is not a vote.
Polling will close in 15 seconds.
Out of the 129 people who cast their vote, 100% voted yes in the affirmative, and so the consent agenda is adopted. At this time, I invite our conference minister, the Reverend Gordon Rankin, to present an overview of the strategic direction for the conference outdoor ministries.
When it comes to the ministry of Horton Center, it is our focused mission to foster deepening and transforming connection with God and God's creation. I say with complete confidence, this past year, these ministries of Horton Center shined in ways that they never have before. I am so very proud of how Horton Center adapted and continue to accomplish its mission even in this very challenging year. Now, little in 2020 happened as expected. And I'm sure if I could see you all right now, I would probably see a bunch of heads nodding up and down yes to that. Little happened as expected at Horton Center either. However, a few things did. One of our 2020 plans was to replace a deteriorating foundation on Hope Cabin. Over the past couple of months, Hope Cabin was raised up, the old foundation was cleared out from underneath, and a new foundation poured. Last Monday, when I was able to visit Horton Center, I was able to see the Hope Cabin snugly set back on her brand new foundation. I want to be sure to thank our board of directors for providing us with a capital funding to be able to complete this project. Needing to be attentive to the maintenance of the access road to Horton Center is a continual expectation, and we did more of that this summer, replacing 3 culverts on the upper part of the road. But that might be it for what was expected. What was not expected was a pandemic that would lead me to making the decision to cancel both our summer camping program and our retreat season and fall programming. I have no doubt that it was a necessary and right decision, but I also know that that did not diminish the grief for our staff, volunteers, campers, and for myself. What was also not expected was the way that our interim executive director and our summer director and our deans raised the mission of Horton Center up out of the ashes of our grief and created a program that soared like a phoenix. HC at Home literally brought the mission of Horton Center into campers' homes. It created community that felt just like Horton Center community, even though most all of us were far away from Pine Mountain. I have said this elsewhere, and I want to be sure to say it here. From what I witnessed, I believe that Horton Center provided the most complete and successful summer camping alternative this summer of any UCC camp setting. One last important and unexpected thing in 2020. Last year at the annual meeting, I talked about starting a search for a new director. That actually did happen, and then it was closed down due to the challenges of the pandemic. The pandemic also changed things for Tim, who after 3 years in an interim position had been ready to explore new possibilities. However, in light of the pandemic, he did not want his last summer with Horton Center to be one without campers on site. Conversations ensued. I am so very pleased today to be able to tell our annual meeting that Tim Hughes has agreed to be the executive director, yes, no longer interim, but the executive director for Horton Center for the next 2 years. And if that didn't create enough excitement, Tim's first act as executive director was to hire Tivi Pere as assistant director for this upcoming year. It may have been unexpected, but it is an absolute blessing to have this dynamic leadership team returning, a blessing that we will experience for the upcoming year and years. With that said, I think I should turn things over to this leadership team. So Tivi, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tivi. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the assistant director of Horton Center. This past summer, after Gordon made the difficult yet responsible choice to not hold camp in person at Horton Center, Tim and I began to reimagine camp in a socially distanced world. Collaborating with our amazing volunteers and gaining insight from our campers and their families, we embarked on a journey that resulted in a completely re-envisioned way of camping. But before we could start thinking of all of the changes we would make and all the new things we would implement and try, we had to first turn our focus to the things that never change about camp. Those things that make Horton Center unique from all other summer camps. Those things that hold true whether you unit camped here in the 80s or you came to senior high week for the first time in 2019. Those things, those ideals, were where we had to start. Clarifying our goals and values helped us realize we weren't reinventing the wheel. We were simply adapting it. These ideals, as our HC at Home logo declares, are 3 simple words: outdoors, community, and spirit. After a few short, busy months of work, we had created HC at Home, a completely virtual, totally free, and wholly amazing program for all campers. 5 summer staff, in addition to Tim and I, worked up at camp after getting COVID tested and quarantining, of course, creating videos in which we introduced activities for campers to do at home in their own time. These activities ranged from caving, now available in a living room near you, to tie-dye, who knew it was possible with just Sharpies and rubbing alcohol. These traditional camp activities came alive in these fun videos that campers raved about all summer long. Volunteer deans provided additional activity videos, often connected with their camp's theme or age group. Campers watched morning watch videos, did camp activities along with videos throughout the day, and joined together each night for vespers and evening programs. Campers led worship together, sang together, got to know each other, and laughed a lot. 1 week into HC at Home, and we knew we were achieving our goals. For 5 weeks this summer, Horton Center programming encouraged youth to get outside and appreciate the beauty of creation, built community among new and old friends, and connected campers with their faith and their place along their journeys. HC at Home far surpassed even our greatest expectations. We had 124 registrations this summer, 91 of which were unique campers. 69 youth campers and 22 adult campers courageously saw the opportunity before them and said, "Why not?" With the help of 24 deans and 10 counselors, our offerings were diverse and plentiful. And it all would not have been possible, especially the cost-free registration, without the $9,350 in donations, which covered all of the HC at Home costs. In addition to HC at Home camps, we also put together the first ever Horton Center Summer Sunday service, complete with pre-recorded service video and live coffee hour, and an awesome musical event with singer-songwriter Andrew Moran. These successes stand as evidence of the creative, courageous, optimistic, and dedicated spirits that hold Horton Center near and dear. I love every one of these hearts, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds as we continue to reimagine camping in safe ways while always holding true to our ideals: outdoors, community, and spirit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tivy. And one upside to doing annual meeting virtually is we get to have Tivy with us, and it's so worth it. Horton Center is here to stay. That mountain is going nowhere anytime soon, and neither are we. I'm Tim Hughes. I use he, him pronouns, and I am so grateful and blessed to be able to serve as executive director for another 2 years at Horton Center. I love that place. So summer 2021, we are planning to have campers back on the mountain in person, of course, with extraordinary precautions in place to keep everyone safe and healthy, using state and ACA guidelines and gleaning the best practices from camps that, that opened successfully in person in 2020. Our early bird registration will begin earlier than ever before on December 15th, with no payments due until January 15th to make it easier than ever to sign up for camp. Building on the success of our HC at Home program, we are rolling out our new HC at Church program designed to enhance and enrich local church youth programming. If you can't come to the mountain, we'll bring the mountain to you. Since you were unable to browse the camp store this summer, for the first time ever, the Horton Center Camp Store will be online beginning November 1st, Santa's elves can order something for everyone on their list. Watch the e-news, our Facebook channel, and our website for details of how to do that. Strategic planning will begin this fall to do some visioning and to continue to increase camper usage and enjoyment of Horton Center. We want as many people as possible to experience the wonder of this conference jewel and the spiritual growth and renewal that comes from joining the amazing community that forms there again and again and again. Be on the lookout for the Horton Center annual appeal letter coming soon to a mailbox near you. The cost of Horton Center at Home was, as Tivy said, thankfully covered by donations, but with no registrations or rental group revenue in 2020, however, the fixed costs of Horton Center remain. So we're appealing to all of you loving supporters to consider making a gift. Your generosity will ensure that Horton Center continues to thrive into 2021 and beyond. So a disclaimer, the video you're about to see has some footage from the 2020 summer staff, but campers, and they're in pink t-shirts that look like these. And the camper shots that you see in the video, though, are from 2019 because we had no campers on the mountain in 2020. So without further ado, James, if you please roll that tape.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
In charge!
Horton Center is a second home. It's your place to go away from home, but it still feels like a home. You know what I mean? It's not a house. It's like, it's a safe place. Kids can go and they don't need to worry about being judged or anything. It doesn't matter your physique, your gender, your pronouns, color of your skin. You can just come here and have fun.
I always feel so at home here. Horton Center is the best part of my summer. And, you know, go to Pinkham Ledge and see these wonderful views, or singing songs around the campfire, or hosting Vespers. There's just something really wonderful about that.
The thing that gets me every time is the community. Even the first time I ever came here, the people around me just wanted me to have fun and have a great time and like enjoy Horton Center and everything that comes with it, which is, you know, learning about yourself, learning about your faith, and they were so excited to share that with me, and it immediately made me feel at home. It was so cool to be able to just like be in a community that was just excited to have me there with them.
The people that you meet, that you end up just clicking with everyone. I've met lifelong friends here, people that have changed my life for the better. And the opportunity to really be yourself here is something that I'm really grateful for and I really appreciate.
I like to chase the rabbits around the camp and everybody gives me yummy cookies, so yeah.
This place is a vessel for communities to grow and form and for people to learn about themselves, about nature, about each other, and about God. What an amazing thing that is for us to be able to provide for our folks in New Hampshire.
So at first I was kind of nervous that I wasn't going to feel like accepted really. I never felt like excluded from anything or like I wasn't invited anywhere.
It was pretty easy to get into the swing of things. Everybody here was super helpful. They were like, nah man, you gotta do it this way. And I was like, thanks. Last year when we were doing the labyrinth, when I got to the center, I specifically asked God, like, I need some guidance. And then as I was getting to the end and I hugged the last person, he whispered in my ear, like, you belong here. It just really felt like God was speaking through you. That was the message I needed right then.
It's a place that anybody can come and just like be accepted. Like it's just like that's who you are and everybody's just gonna
take it as it is and be okay with it, and there's not going to be any questions asked. So yeah, I'd probably say safe for whoever you want to be.
I remember one time we were staying up at Pinkham Ledge and we were sitting out and the full moon had come up and it like looked like a sunrise, which was insane. So it was like our last night at camp, and just out of nowhere, like with no prompting from anybody, like somebody started singing like the Shalom song, because we just like couldn't go to bed without it. That feeling of like, you know, we're sending each other off to go to bed, and it was just a really beautiful moment.
I really enjoy being on the mountain. It's a simple thing, but I do just like being in nature in general. And when we slept up on Pinkham Ledge, I saw the stars. That was super cool.
But having worship on Chapel Rock, it's like one of the perfect settings for having worship. You're out there, it's in God's creation, and you're just surrounded by beauty and the people up there and singing the songs.
The word that comes to mind right now is glorious.
A lot of the times that we've been up on the ledges, either sleeping out, I remember one time when we could see 5 planets at once in the sky.
Come to Horton Center to see views like this.
I can remember as a camper being invited to participate and toss in my thoughts into the pool for things to pray about was really cool. I mean, someone cared about what I wanted to pray for. As a staff member, I've heard campers really dig deep and open up about some communities that they're aware of that need to be prayed for. In those moments, I see campers engaging with their faith in ways that they don't have the opportunity to elsewhere. They're doing things, they're talking about it, they're asking questions, they're using I statements. And when that happens, those campers have had a connection with God that they can't have elsewhere.
Why do you love Horton Center?
I love Horton Center because it's where I can be without a leash, and I think that goes for a lot of people. They get to take off their leashes when they come to Horton Center too.
Campers come to Horton Center, it's this blank slate of opportunity, and I've seen campers and volunteers and staff members take that opportunity and turn it into whatever they need at that point in their life, and they find something out about themselves that they really needed to, and they can go back into the world more confident.
People grow when they come here, and they have new experiences, and they learn about themselves and about one another in ways that just doesn't happen very often in other places in our lives. If you had to use one word to describe Horton Center, what would that word be?
Oh, I know what it is. Horton Center is all about eating yummy snacks and sharing them with your friends. Yep, that's it. Can I get off this chair now?
Oh, it makes me want to go up to the mountain. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. And thank you for your support. And thank you for coming to Horton Center.
We'll see you on the mountain.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Gordon, Tim, and Tivy, for everything you do up on the mountain. And I know we are all looking forward to being able to go there as soon as possible. At this time, I'm going to announce that we have a 10-minute break, which will bring us back at about 5 minutes after 10. So I will see you in 10 minutes. Well, welcome back. At this time, I will hold off. Wait a minute. I'm seeing if we do have our registrar's report. So in attendance, we have 175 people representing 67 churches. There are 5 youth delegates, 11 members of the board of directors, and the results are still coming in. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to break it down anyway, but I do. Oh, here we go. 60 clergy and 81 lay delegates with 18 visitors. And so we do indeed have a quorum. Thank you, Ann and Cindy, for getting that report together for us. During the course of the year, 2 resolutions were approved by our board of directors in accordance with our bylaws. A resolution calling on the United Church of Christ to adopt the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent, and a prudential resolution requesting that the Alliance of Associate Conference Ministers be recognized as a formal group within the United Church of Christ. But today we also have a resolution for consideration by the gathered conference. And as we go forward into our conversation and into our discussion and debate, I remind everyone at this point to use the Q&A feature only when you need to speak to the business at hand. I invite Reverend Dr. Robert Shore-Goss, member of the Federated Church of Marlborough and of the Environmental Justice Mission Group, to present the resolution of Christian Witness calling for prophetic action by listening to the cries of the earth and by adopting the rights of nature.
I'd like to start off this morning by using my pronouns, which normally are he, his, him, and cisgender. However, this morning I also want to adopt my nature pronouns, which is ki for singular, myself, and kin for the family of kinships of relationships with nature. It's to move a concept of nature, not as an it or an object, but as a sense of aliveness and personhood that contributes to me as a person and aliveness that we have in the web of life. It was serendipitous that we chose the passage for opening service from Isaiah 58, which spoke of being repairers of the breach and restorers of streams. This resolution addresses that. We have a history, which I could go in depth, the United Church of Christ of being very positive about nature from the 19th century on. And certainly I want to start off with a quote from Aldo Leopold, who's the father of conservation movement in the United States, who as a conservationist began to repair and restore a piece of land, and he reflected on it and basically wrote a Bible on restoration and repair called the San County Almanac. And he says, we abuse land because we see it as a commodity, a thing belonging to us. When we see it as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. The intention of this resolution is to move us as a conference and in general, the denomination to a recognition that what we have been doing in defending nature for the last several synods and the resolutions coming out of there in terms of mountaintop harvesting, divesting from fossil fuels, to certainly the Green New Deal and carbon trade cap resolution in Congress, These are all recognizing that nature is very important and that nature is very important to ourselves. So I certainly would like to say that I would trace beginning part of our history to environmental racism and a group of African American women who took it upon themselves to lie down on the streets in Warren County, North Carolina, to block huge trucks bringing toxic waste and PCBs into their neighborhood for a dump and creating illness. Certainly out of that, the UCC took their challenge and developed a whole curriculum on environmental racism with 2 historic reports in 1987 and 2007 on toxic dumping and those people who live close to it. And they found that a percentage mostly of poor people, African Americans, indigenous peoples, Asians, and Hispanics, and their health were being severely impacted. So certainly I would say that Leopold's notion that when we create unhealthy environment, we also create unhealthy environment for human beings. The right of nature is a movement that is larger than the UCC, and it's not new. It started in the 1980s, and it also began to blossom in the Southern Hemisphere in the 1990s with the Charter of the Earth and a growing indigenous movements saying that it's enough that we've got to take back our lands and we've got to protect them, resulting in indigenous peoples in New Zealand, Bolivia, and Ecuador incorporating the rights of nature into their constitutions. And certainly indigenous First Nation peoples in the United States and Canada have done likewise. So I want to say that putting the rights of nature is not a theological thing. It is, well, it is theological, and I don't use the word creation, which is a theological term that monotheistic traditions do. I use nature, which indigenous peoples and non-monotheistic traditions use, and secular people, because nature is, we're part of nature. Nature should be understood not as mere property serving only our benefit for profit or trash and damage. When I teach in the university, I show pictures of the big island of plastic waste in the Pacific, the size of Texas. It's horrific. Every piece of fish that you eat coming out of the ocean has little microplastics in them. You are digesting fish. Plus, what fish are digesting is certainly unhealthy for themselves. Human beings who are part of the environment must learn to speak up for the rights of nature. It's interesting that our Supreme Court several years ago found corporations to have rights of nature, but nature doesn't have any rights. And I think that this practical sort of resolution really looks at certainly the beginnings of a process of stating publicly and prophetically that nature has rights. And certainly I want to tell a story because this was part of a webinar. And I've done this webinar presentation about 8 or 9 times and have found support in every place I've done on a national basis, as well as various affinity groups within the UCC. In the decades, several years ago, the city of Toledo experienced massive amount of large agribusiness waste in Lake Erie to the point that they could not use water for drinking or bathing. It had to be imported into the city. And so there was a movement for the biotic rights of Lake Erie, and it would pass overwhelmingly. Several days afterwards, the Assistant Attorney General for the state, in alliance with agribusiness, went to a court and filed an injunction to stop this referendum. And certainly I want to say that there's always a prejudice for the last century for courts to find for business and corporations over nature. We do not have the luxury of standing by and saying no to this. We need to take active sort of statement. No religious community outside indigenous peoples, the Pope has said basically at the United Nations that environmental rights exist. I want to say that the UCC needs to put forward in the foreground saying nature has rights and we need to speak for it. And certainly we need to reanimate nature as part of our worship and part of our advocacy and certainly part of our justice. I want to say that certainly that this is an amendment that will only begin to be basically empowered by the environmental justice team in New Hampshire by providing resources for us to, on an ongoing basis, to our churches. And we have them, and we also have them on a national basis and a 10-year mobilization plan for our churches to really prepare for the next decade, which we will see increasing horrific examples of catastrophe. As you know, my husband and I came from California, where the fires are just almost like an Armageddon and catastrophe. One night, 4 miles away from us, there was a firestorm in Santa Rosa Valley that went up and swept and destroyed 9,000 houses and displaced 100,000 climate refugees, which the UCC churches and other community members around assisted. When we look at the fires there this year, which are horrific, the fires in Australia, we look at the hurricanes, we see that climate change is real, and we must prepare our churches to be climate change churches. So I really propose that we start looking seriously by declaring publicly that nature has rights. We would be the first Christian polity, but I don't think we'll be the last one that will say that nature has rights. Certainly, I want to point to one thing about nature rights in our own state. There are 4 municipalities that have taken up the rights of water. And certainly Barnstead was one of them. And it was to protect their waters from pollution. Nottingham refused to allow and put into place a corporate rights of their water to prevent large mining of the water by corporations for drinking water and bottled water. They did a study and they found that after 10 years, they would be losing major water to aquifer. And if you know what's happening in New Hampshire this summer, we're suffering drought. So certainly they were prophetic in defending the rights of water, and we need to defend the rights of water. We need to defend the rights of nature and wildlife. If we lose that, we will lose a battle to a major catastrophe and a growing catastrophe for our children and our children's children. I'll end there with the hopes that we will stand forth and be prophetic and a prophetic denomination to send this to our synod, which I think will pass.
Thank you, Robert.
There are 5 churches outside of, well, okay.
Okay, sorry, Robert. Thank you. And so at this time, I am going to invite the Reverend Dr. Joseph Shorgoss, pastor of the Federated Church Marlborough and co-author of the resolution, to present the resolution of Christian witness for a vote. And I'm going to remind everyone that on the resolution itself, we are voting only on the be it resolved section of the resolution. This is noted in the standing rules. Joseph?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Pardon me. I am Reverend Dr. Joseph Shorgoss from the Federated Church of Marlborough. My pronouns are he, him, his. And I would like to, on behalf of our church, I move that the adoption of the resolution of Christian witness as it has been presented.
Okay, it has been moved to adopt the resolution of Christian witness as presented. And since it was referred to this meeting by the Board of Directors, it does not require a second. So I am going to remind anyone who wants to speak to this about the need to follow the procedure as adopted in our standing rules. You will indicate your desire to speak by raising your hand and using the Q&A feature indicating whether you're going to speak against or for the motion, or if you are making a point of order or suggesting an amendment. When I recognize you, you will be allowed to speak, and you need to state your name, your church, and whether you are speaking against, for, or the motion or making a point of order or an amendment. There is a 2-minute limit on all speeches. There'll be a little timer on the screen. And I think that's it for our reminders. So the question is on the motion to adopt the resolution of Christian witness as posted on the conference website. And I am going to invite the presenter of the resolution to speak first. That's Joseph or Robert.
Yep, okay. I think we have a chance to make prophetic history within the UCC and Christianity. As this resolution was put on the website, not only here, but on the denomination website, I started getting calls from various legal organizations that were fascinated and interested in what was happening. And I said, it's too premature. Talk to me a year from now when it gets to Synod. Then we will talk. The UCC can become the first polity to declare the rights of nature and to realize that nature is integral to our existence. And certainly I think that by taking a pioneer position, one of the delegates here and a member of our green team is a member of the Carbon Dividend led a group within New Hampshire working for the basically reducing carbon usage and paying a dividend for it. And she presented after our discussion on Tuesday to this group, and they got excited that the UCC was doing this. That's kind of an indication I have found from various groups and churches outside our conference and in our conference that are excited about the prophetic sort of stance that we can take for nature. And I think that this would offer real commitment to say that we're going to work on nature and defend its nature, because who can speak for nature? Nature is speaking loudly with the catastrophes we're experiencing, but we're losing wildlife. There was a British study that pointed out that they followed 4,300 species over the last 20 years, and the reduction of the population by 60%, and the water life population has decreased by 80%. Without biodiversity, we cannot survive and prosper, and flourish. And so nature has a right to prosper and flourish as well. And I think that we need to see nature as God sees nature.
Thank you, Robert.
And I've been reminded I only have 2 minutes.
Yeah, we had a little glitch with the timer, and I think you did just fine. Thank you. Is there any debate? I am not seeing anyone raising their hand and asking a question. I know a number of people attended the webinar, and so or the Zoom meeting, and so maybe that's why I'm happy that I'm not seeing any, but I just
Carolyn,
don't.
there is a raised hand among the attendees.
Oh, thank you. All right. Sorry. Of course, I'm going to need a little help, because while I see that there's a raised hand, I have no idea how to read this. I can't figure out.
The name is Shirley. Does she wish to ask a question?
Okay,
or-
there's a number. All right, once your hand is raised, it would be helpful if, oh, somebody's got, there we go. All right, so I have a question from, sorry, maybe our parliamentarian. When somebody raises a question, I can call upon them and then they're going to read their question. Is that how it is done?
That works.
Okay, so I'm calling upon Gail Kinney. She has 2 minutes to ask. It looks like it's a point of order. I'm calling on Gail Kinney. Can somebody, she's mute. Is she unmuted?
Okay, I think I've just been unmuted.
Okay, thank you.
So it was really, yeah, just a point of order question. I mean, the resolution obviously is very thoughtfully written, and a lot of people have taken a look at this in the to this resolution. Joseph Shorgoss mentioned at the very beginning the horrific environmental racism which is rampant in this country. But as I read the resolution, particularly the now therefore be it resolved, I don't see environmental racism very explicitly and intentionally mentioned. And as I looked at it, I see a couple of places where it could be added. And so I am just asking or suggesting that before this goes to Synod, if the authors of the resolution could maybe look at it very, very carefully and see if there are places where where the notion of environmental racism can be very, very explicitly and intentionally mentioned.
All right, thank you, Gail. That doesn't sound like you're making an amendment. I'm going to ask Robert to speak to that. And I'm just going to ask the other person with their hand up to write the question in. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. The UCC has really, in social justice, really made a cornerstone of environmental racism. When this was written, it was focusing mostly on the racism towards nature, because we have certainly a racism there. We diminish and discriminate against nature. And certainly it also could include indigenous peoples, because just in our neighborhood across the state in New York, the Iroquois in the 1990s nation felt the experience of basically building toxic dumps with PCBs, which created carcinogens for cancer. So it could be extended to indigenous peoples. But most of that a lot of it has already been prefaced in terms of our work. And Tracy Blackman constantly, every presentation I've heard her talk about, she brought in environmental racism. So certainly, yes, that is important and critical. But the focus has been mostly on nature in this resolution. And it could be corrected on that too. I'm not opposed to that at all. I would like to expand it, and certainly expand it. And I found that the Justice Group on Food Justice said, well, we need to talk about agriculture. And I said, well, how about you do that? We just can't get everything into one resolution. So I appreciate the question and observation.
Okay, thank you, Robert. All right, so I'm still a little new at this. So if you want to speak, you do raise your hand and then you type in a Q&A so that we know. I see. So as soon as David, you have a chance to just say whether you're speaking for, against, or a point of order or amendment in the Q&A place. Thank you for raising your hand.
Carolyn, may I ask for a point of privilege to speak to Gail's question?
Sure. And that will give David a minute to type his.
It was totally planned that way. So, Gail, I just wanted to add, in submitting a resolution to Synod, they have a requirement that a resolution not be a repeat of a resolution that has happened at one of the last two synods, and environmental racism has been addressed at those synods. So that is part of the reason it's not made explicit in this resolution, is because we need to make it very clear what's new in this resolution and not what's been a repeat of what's happened at Synod in the last couple of years. So there is some strategy in the way the resolution has been put together in order to get it to the floor.
Okay, and I just want to remind everyone that you raised your hand, and that lets us know that you wish to speak. But in the Q&A, I need to know if you are speaking for, against, a point of order, or an amendment. So
Can the person
here we
just
go.
announce that as they speak?
Thank you.
David
All right.
Keller's been permitted to speak, so.
Okay, at this point, David, oh, thank you. Go ahead, David Keller. Has David Keller been given permission to speak?
He's answered in the Q&A now.
Okay, David has asked a point of order. This is a very ambitious action plan. Who will take on these actions and how will they be pursued? Robert? Or Gordon?
I think I defer to Bob on this one.
Oh, okay.
When I came into the UCC, my privilege of call, and I asked the Southern California Nevada Conference for a commission on to become an evangelist for the earth and earth rights. And certainly I've pastored a church that became the first creation justice church in the denomination, and I've served on, and I still serve on the Environmental Justice Council for the last 5 years, and serve on the environmental justice team of New Hampshire and several other groups, etc. I've written extensively on these issues. I've got resources, and I've taught seminary courses on greening your church and theological and practical foundations. I've got the curriculum in hand, and I know the environmental justice team here is empowering and has resources and will work with churches on this. We have scheduled a youth summit, virtual youth summit, climate summit in November, which I'm excited about because I think it will attract folks. I think we have the resources. We can empower churches. We can support churches to work on their green issues or become a climate change church or creation justice church. We can help put nature as a principal part of our worship with the season of creation and many other things. If you look below, after this, therefore be it resolved, there's all sorts of suggestions, and I have a curriculum for all of that. And I know that the environmental justice team and the council have had affinity groups, and the 10-year mobilization, Kairos mobilization plan, which the conference in Wisconsin has adopted and is trying to implement. I hope I answered your question. Otherwise, we can email and talk further too.
Okay, thank you. At this time, there's been lots of time to raise your hand, or in the olden days, we would go to a microphone. Seeing no hands raised, seeing nobody typing in the Q&A, I'm going to then say that the question is on, that I see no further debate. And the question is on the motion to adopt the resolution of Christian witness on the rights of nature as written. So those in favor, answer the polling question, yes. Those opposed, answer the polling question, no. And those abstaining, including those with voice but not vote, simply do not respond to the polling question.
Polling will close in 15 seconds.
So I will say that 99% of those voting were in favor of this resolution. And so the affirmative has it, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. At this time, I call upon the Reverend Gordon Rankin to share a message.
We are about to move into the money consideration section of our annual meeting. And I believe that this conversation can only start in one place, and that is with gratitude. We know that there has been additional uncertainty, stress, and even challenges around fiscal matters for our churches this year. And we are so very grateful for your continued support to the wider church in the midst of these realities. To our churches, for your continued support of our church's wider mission and fellowship dues. Thank you. To individuals who support Friends of the Conference and or the Horton Center Annual Appeal, thank you. And to both churches and or individuals who give directed gifts to our 4 national offerings, to our Immigration Bond Fund, or to assist our Ocampa partners improving food security among their people. Thank you. We greatly value your every gift and work very hard to steward your gifts faithfully to accomplish the work which God has called us. I, however, am not the only one who wishes to express gratitude. Here are a few other words of thanks.
Hello to all of my friends and the delegates of the New Hampshire Conference. I'm John Dorhauer, General Minister and President of the United Church of Christ. And I want you to know that as you gather in your virtual annual meeting, you are in my thoughts and prayers. Especially in my thoughts and prayers is your conference minister, Gordon Rankin, a friend of mine and an extraordinary leader. You are very fortunate to have him, and I'm glad that he's there with you. I also want to thank all of the churches of the New Hampshire Conference for your extraordinary gifts to the wider church. Last year, almost $170,000 was collected from the New Hampshire Conference and your churches. And for that, I'm truly grateful. We've had to pivot a little in this year, and some of the things that we thought we might be doing, we've had to put on hold while we did these things, believing by doing so that we are wisely stewarding the resources you entrust to us for the sake of our shared mission. We've been able to open up an R&D department in the CARD office. R&D, research and development. CARD is our center for our analytics, research, and data. Pete Langani is the new hire in the R&D department, and they are observing across the life of the church where creativity and ingenuity and entrepreneurship are happening, and they are studying there with data and analytics that we can replicate and publish what is happening that could be useful across the life of the entire denomination. We're very excited about that. We've also been able to conduct webinars, educational webinars, helping the church deal with this time of pandemic every Tuesday, spiritual and uplifting webinars where we pray for each other and take care of each other every Thursday. We also were able to put together a resource called Emerge, a book of prayers and pieces of liturgy written by leaders across the life of this denomination. And as we published that, we were able then, as a gift, to send that free of charge to every authorized minister in the United Church of Christ. So thank you for those contributions. I pray that as you gather in your virtual annual meeting, you will collectively discern the movement of the Holy Spirit in and through this time. I pray that with that you are able to continue the good work for which you are known, preaching and teaching the good news of God's redeeming and transformative love. And one last word on a personal note. Even though the entire denomination experiences the grief and loss at the death of our former General Minister and President, Avery Post, I know that many of you in the New Hampshire Conference take that on a very personal level. He was a member of the Church of Christ in Dartmouth, and I just want to offer all of you my condolences, my deep sympathy at that loss. He was a great man and a friend of mine, and I miss him dearly. Know that you all are all in my thoughts and prayers. I lift you up in prayer and pray that the Holy Spirit of our living God and risen Christ will abide with you now and forevermore. Amen.
Good morning. This is Bruce Kinney, a member of the Church, United Church of Christ in Manchester, and I'm your conference president-elect. I now call upon Phil Warren, a member of the Third Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Alstead, and our conference treasurer to present the treasurer's report.
Looks good. Hey, good morning. So I want to mirror Gordon's comments and thank all of our churches across the conference for supporting the conference ministry and all the work that's done here. And also thank Lydia Frasker, our financial officer, for her accuracy. John just reported that we contributed about $170,000 to the national setting, and it was actually $209,102. The additional approximately $40,000 we sent right after the end of the calendar year. So that's why he hadn't included it. Many of our churches send money to the conference in December, and they keep the books open for our support until the end of February. So just a short clarification on that. Total operating expenses, you can see the number there. We had a deficit of $50,431. The additional funds that came for the American Tower extension to the cell phone tower was $50,000. That would have put our budget deficit at only $431. However, the board voted to restrict that money for the Hope cabin repairs and technology upgrades. The Hope cabin repairs are completed, and the cost was $29,888, and we're thrilled that that's completed. The technology upgrades are ongoing. A lot of the hardware is back ordered because of so many people using home computers and businesses going to Zoom meetings, so we don't have that completed yet. We completed our thorough, exhaustive audit, and that was, we're in compliance with standard accounting practices, and I wanted to report that to everyone. On to 2020. This is a July, this report is submitted a little bit prior to this presentation. We lost on-site camping, as you know, at the Horton Center. We've heard all about it. We're going to be a little over $100,000 probably at the end of the year. However, the Horton Center, we did a special appeal and we collected so far $13,650, and that's about $9,000 more than we had last year. So we're really happy about that. And the total contributions to our church's wider mission are down about 38,000, and I'm happy to report as of today we're only off about $5,000, so that's picked up and we appreciate the support there. We decreased our national contribution from 40 to 35%. Operating expenses have been reduced by $76,798. And we were very blessed to receive a payroll protection plan loan in the amount of $117,200. And we're confident that that loan will be forgiven. All that said, we should enter the end of the 2020 in the black. I'm happy to report that. I'll make one additional note for those on this meeting that Reverend Wynn Nelson and his wife Beryl left a charitable remainder Unitrust to the New Hampshire Conference, which is approximately $18,000. Unitrust they set up provided them lifetime income, and upon their passing, the balance came to the conference. The trustees and board have a policy and how to use that money. We use it for endowment. We use it for wider mission and so forth. So we're very happy to report that. And that's something people should think about. The final note is as of now, we have a 0 line of credit. Usually this time of year, we're into a line of credit because we get a lot of our support from the churches in December. But as of now, we're not into our line of credit. So we're really thrilled. That's my report. And if there's any questions, we'll take them.
Phil, there is a question about what is the address for how the mission money is divided? I think that's a pointer to your report on the webpage, correct?
How the mission money is divided?
Hello. Hi. I know we have a budget for different types of ministries. We have ministry to the United Council of Churches, justice and so forth. We have, I don't remember how many categories, but I wanted to know how that money was divided up.
I'll let Gordon address that with some more accuracy than I have.
So Sandra, I actually think I'm going to ask if you will hold your question for a moment, because we're about to do a presentation in just a minute on the 2020 mission income and spending plan. And I think you will see all of that on the slides for that presentation. If we don't answer your question to that, please bring that question back around and we'll try to answer it. But I think we're just about to give you the answer in a lot of detail. So.
Okay, thank you, Sandra, and thank you, Gordon. I now call upon the Reverend Carolyn Keilig on behalf of the Board of Directors to present the proposed mission income and spending plan for 2021. A copy of the mission income and spending plan has been posted on the conference website. Carolyn?
Sure. Thank you, Bruce. And I want to thank those who attended the budget hearing on October 6th. The slides will look familiar to you. So if you would just, thank you. So Phil has just gone over what's going on right now with our finances. I don't think I need to go over these again. So if we will keep moving on to looking forward to 2021 and our mission and income spending plan. So there were 3 key aspects. We are still uncertain about the impact of COVID-19 on both our revenue and our expense streams. And so this year we asked our ministry teams if they would be willing and able to maintain their budgets at the 2020 levels into 2021, and they concurred. And so then we also chose to look at our Horton Center budget with the hope that we will be able to resume on-site camp in 2021, at least in a modified way. And so that's taken into account in our budget. And finally, we have some expense savings due to the fact that our General Synod that was going to be in Kansas City is now going to be held virtually in 2021. So in looking at our revenue, because we were hoping to go forward with no major changes, we're keeping our projections for OCWM the same. We're not making any changes in fellowship dues. There's going to be a slight increase in our cell tower and office rental income. Our investment income is stable, and that is partly because we do a rolling average of 20 quarters, 5 years. And so that means that any given year, if our investments tank, if there's a major recession or some instability that causes investment income to fall, or if we have a great year of productivity and it goes up, we don't see that volatility in our income from our investments. We roll it over 5 years, and so it produces a very stable, predictable income. We are hoping that our appeal, our Friends of New Hampshire Conference appeals in April, and you will be getting a letter soon in November, will increase by about $10,000 next year. And we are excited about the gifts that come to Horton Center, but we are not budgeting for an increase. And so this looks to be, so you will see that there's not a real big increase in our revenue. It's about $20,000 is what we're anticipating. And most of it, just a little bit from rents and a little bit from or significant amount from our Friends appeal. But otherwise, we're not seeing big increases in our revenue. On the expensive side, and I hope this answers the question, if I interpreted it correctly, if Gordon and I did, that our OCWM as voted last year, 65% stays within the New Hampshire Conference and does all those things that we love so much within our conference, while 35% goes and is shared with our UCC national setting. And so if you look, last year at the end of the year, we shared $209,102. Next year, it remains the same as this year, and we are anticipating that to be at $184,450. But last year, when we changed that ratio, we said that if the conference ends the year with a surplus, 50% of the surplus is given to the national setting. So as I mentioned earlier, our ministry team's expenses are staying level at 2020 year, at this year's level. But you will see in our next slide, which we're not going to quite yet, that there's a small change to the Christian Formation Ministry Team budget, and that's just an accounting change. It has to do with outdoor ministries and some spending that was charged to Christian Formation. It's just an accounting change. It makes more sense that it go directly into the outdoor ministry budget. We approved a 1.8 COLA for the staff and approximately $1,850 of sabbatical coverage expenses in 2021. Richard will be returning to us in January. And finally, the travel expense savings as well as other savings due to our virtual synod. So in broad generalities, this is what our expenses look like by our ministry teams. As I noted before, it's flat, there's no increase, and the Christian Formation Ministry budget, while it looks smaller, it's the portion that had always gone to outdoor ministries. And here's the overall expenses. So in summary, we do have a revitalized finance ministry team that has been meeting monthly, even throughout the pandemic, and as well as working on all the things that we hope will increase our giving. We also believe that our HC at Home and our HC at Church programs that Tim and Tivy have provided for us will result in increased camper participation. Please note that this year, for the first time in as long as I can remember, the 2021 Mission and Income Spending Plan is a balanced budget. But there's still some uncertainty due to COVID-19, but we are prepared to figure out how to work within that budget to make sure that everything that needs to be done next year will be done. And finally, be assured that the New Hampshire Conference will use all of our resources, fiscal, staffing, and programmatic, to serve our churches as best as we are able.
Tim, there's a question if we can go back to the slide about the breakout for the ministry teams.
And I will note that in the narrated budget, all these it's found on the annual meeting webpage. The annotated budget has all the details of what each of the ministries do, and how they choose to divide up what they have asked for each of the mission groups. So more information can be found in that narrative budget.
Are there any further questions on Carolyn's presentation? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt it.
Sorry. On behalf of the Board of Directors, I move the adoption of the proposed mission income and spending plan for 2021 as written.
It is moved to adopt the proposed mission income and spending plan for 2021 as written. Since this comes from the Board of Directors, it does not require a second. And as we begin the discussion portion, I remind you to raise your hand and use the question and answer feature in Zoom. Be sure to indicate if you intend to speak in favor of the item being discussed, or to speak against the item, or to ask a question or make a point of order. Also, as outlined in the standing rules, each speaker has a total of 2 minutes to speak. And Sandra has an additional question. What is the wider church relations ministry? Carolyn, can you address that?
I'm frantically trying to remember my report. I don't sit on that committee. It is, Gordon, thank you for jumping in.
So Sandra, for us, Wider Church Ministries is anything that happens in the national or global context. As far as fiscal expenditures for us, it falls into a couple key areas within a few smaller things. The two key areas are our OCAMA partnership with the United Church of Christ in Zimbabwe, as well as a lot of the funds that we use to support General Synod delegates.
Thank you, Gordon. I see one raised hand. Paula, would you either enter your question in the Q&A, or you've now been enabled to talk if you would like to? Okay, I see Paula's all set. Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion on the mission income and spending plan? Seeing none, I will move to the vote. The question is on the motion to adopt the proposed mission income and spending plan for 2021 as presented by the Board of Directors. Those in favor answer the polling question yes. Those opposed answer the polling question no. Those abstaining, including you with voice but not vote, simply do not respond to the question.
Polling will close in 15 seconds.
I'm pleased to announce that the vote is unanimous, 133 to 0. The 2021 Mission Income and Spending Plan is adopted. I now invite the Reverend Gordon Rankin to provide us with a General Synod update as we prepare for the first ever virtual gathering of a General Synod.
Because preparations for General Synod start almost 4 years in advance, and in light of the pandemic, last June, the United Church of Christ Board made the decision that the 33rd General Synod will be held virtually. The General Synod Program and Planning Committee have decided that the event will take place daily July 11th through the 18th from 5 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Pre-Synod events will occur on the 7th through the 11th. And I will say, even though that's what the Program and Planning Committee are reporting, I have actually seen draft agendas that do include some daytime programming on the final Friday and Saturday of Synod, just so you can help make your plans. The agenda will include worship, keynote speakers, as well as committee and resolution work. There will be a service of installation for the Reverend Karen Georgia Thompson as Associate General Minister for Wider Church Ministries and Operations. She had been slated to have an installation held during the March meeting of the UCC board, although that was postponed due to the pandemic. The Reverend Tracy Blackman, Associate General Minister for Justice and Local Church Ministries, is nominated to come around for re-election at this General Synod. In addition to the business, there will be a virtual exhibit hall, and there will also be a dynamic Youth at Synod program. The United Church of Christ Board has adopted a number of changes in the General Synod resolution process. Resolutions are due on or before October 31st, 2020. The New Hampshire Conference will be presenting 3 resolutions for consideration, as you have already heard. Some of these will be presented in partnership with other conferences. The first is the resolution of Christian Witness on the rights of nature that you passed earlier today. And then the 2 that have been approved by our Board of Directors in accordance with our bylaws, a resolution calling on the United Church of Christ to adopt the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent, and a prudential resolution requesting that the Alliance of Associate Conference Ministers be recognized as a formal group within the United Church of Christ.
I now invite Glenn Vodra, a member of the South Congregational Church, Concord, and a member of the New Hampshire Conference Board of Directors, and a youth who has participated in previous national youth events, to provide us with information about NYE and plans for the next gathering to be held June 27th through 30th, 2022 at Purdue University. Glenn?
Hello, New Hampshire Conference. My name is Glenn Vodra, member of South Congregational Church in Concord. And I wanted to take a few moments to tell you about National Youth Event. NYE is an amazing opportunity for the youth at the UCC to come together, grow their faith, and share in a wonderful week of amazing opportunities and experiences. The 3 main highlights of the event are worship, service, and workshops. And I feel that each of these are key opportunities to help youth grow in different ways. With worship, this is probably my favorite part of the event. Worship involves thousands of people and amazing scripture and reflection. You get to participate in the service, as well as take on key leadership roles where you can lead reflections, share your talents through art and music and dance, and also raise your voices in song and praise. The second highlight of NYE is a focus on service opportunities. The location of the event being held in Purdue. I'm sure they will reach out to many local organizations, contact them, and set up work sessions kind of around the area. Service projects can also focus on expressing our beliefs in social, racial, and environmental justice. And in the end, the youth reflect on the work and how it helped them build a just world for all. The final highlight is workshops. These are great opportunities for personal growth, as well as providing the opportunity for youth to learn new skills, meet new people, and then learn about important topics in the world around them. These workshops can allow time for personal growth and reflection as well. This year, NYE was held virtually with a number of recorded videos and live streams. These videos and live streams are still available to anyone who can watch them on the UCC YouTube, as well as being able to access them on their website. While I was not able to watch them all live, I did take some time to view a few of them after the fact, and I thought they were great. They covered a lot of the stuff that I mentioned above, and I would recommend that if you weren't able to attend the event, you can still check them out, share them with people in your congregation, share them with the youth in your congregation especially, because I feel they all kind of captured the essence of NYE. And then speaking to the next one, it's scheduled to be in person, June 27th through 30th, 2020 at Purdue University. Make sure you mark your calendars. You can check out the website for more information, and tell people in your church to come check it out. It's awesome.
Thank you, Glenn. At this time, I now call upon the Reverend David Felton to lead us as we celebrate all the saints.
This morning, we name and honor some of our faith saints, those who have gone ahead and those who live and serve among us now. We first remember those who have gone before us as beloved friends and honored colleagues in our faith communities. We honor them as steadfast saints of the church, visible and invisible. Their lives and legacies are reminders that God continues to speak and act through all of us, for each of us is part of Holy Love's living narrative. The Reverend William Bill Salt. Merle S. Cole Sr. The Reverend Dr. William A. Zeckhausen. The Reverend Dr. Edward C. Bastille. The Reverend R. Winthrop Nelson Jr. The Reverend Charles Heslem. Reverend Henry Bierstow. The Reverend Leslie Norman.
Thank you. Among those faithful servants are our conference leadership. We will now elect our new conference board of directors and nominating committee members, but we will also acknowledge those who have been asked to serve on conference ministries and as general synod delegates. I invite Pat Harris, a member of the Congregational Church of Hollis, United Church of Christ, and the chairperson of the conference's nominating committee, to present the report of the nominating committee. If you would give us a few seconds, I think we are having some technical difficulties. Just a minute.
Is this a time to pause for a song break?
No,
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay.
The nominating committee submits the nominations of persons listed in its report as posted on the conference website and as projected here. You are reminded, per our conference bylaws, that conference officers, president, president-elect, secretary, and treasurer shall be elected by the gathered conference for a term of 2 years. Their term shall begin at the close of meeting at which they are elected, and they shall serve until their successors are elected. All current conference officers were elected in 2019 and shall continue serving the remainder of their terms. The board of directors shall consist of the conference officers and 12 persons elected at large by the gathered conference from a slate proposed by the nominating committee. Their term shall begin at the close of meeting at which they are elected. Board of directors members are elected for a term of 3 years. Board members for the class of 2023 are being elected today. The class of 2021 and 2022 members were elected previously and shall continue serving the remainder of their terms. The nominating committee shall consist of 5 members, 3 members to be elected by the gathered conference from a slate provided by the nominating committee, and 2 members appointed by the president. Their term shall begin at the close of meeting at which they are elected. Nominating committee members are elected to serve a term of 2 years. 2 new members are being elected this year. 1 member was elected previously and shall continue serving their term. The other 2 members are appointed. General Synod delegates are, just waiting for the slide. Here we go. General Synod delegates are elected positions. All General Synod delegates, class of 2021, alternates, and class of 2023 were previously elected and shall continue serving the remainder of their terms. All ministry members are appointed positions. These are included in the nominating report to acknowledge those who have been asked and accepted the invitation to serve, and we thank them. Carolyn, I think I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you. We're going to just simply point out that those in red are who we are voting for this year. And now these are all appointed positions that we are seeing. The written report is again found on the New Hampshire Conference website and at the annual meeting tab. And it will have all these names. Thank you, Pat. Because only one person is nominated for each position and our bylaws do not require that a ballot vote be taken, If I see no objection, then I will declare those individuals nominated to be elected. Pat, I don't know if you are able to speak to the decisions around how we find nominees.
It's really a team effort. We advertise or announce it in the weekly news that positions are open, and if people would like to serve, they should be in contact with somebody on the committee and give that contact information. And then we brainstorm among us who would be a good fit for which position. And then it's a matter of calling and asking and inviting and being grateful when people say yes.
And so we do look at things such as gender identity. We do look at things as to age. We do look at ethnicity, and we do look at a balance of clergy and lay.
And we also consider geographic distribution across the conference. And so each association is represented on the board, for instance, and as General Synod delegates.
Yes. Right. I am not seeing any objections, and so I declare those individuals nominated to be elected. I now call upon the Reverend Gordon Rankin for the commissioning of our newly elected leadership.
The New Hampshire Conference of the United Church of Christ is a tree of life planted by God, deeply rooted in the granite soil of our state. Through the organic expression of the church flows the gifts of God: faith, hope, and love, justice, mercy, and peace for all the people of God. We remember how Jesus said, "You did not choose me, but I chose you. And I appointed you to go and bear fruit, fruit that will last. I am giving you these commandments so that you may love one another." Chosen of God, today we celebrate that God has summoned some among you to serve in this conference and to bear fruit that will nourish the churches in their mission in the world. As you begin your service, let us covenant together. Now, because Zoom doesn't work very well for multiple voices speaking at once, I have asked our newly elected members, of which there are 4 present with us today, to respond to their covenant using signs I have prepared for them. So I would now ask our newly elected folks to hold your signs up as a sign of your willingness to be about the work of God in your newly elected positions. For those who can't read in the small boxes, I will tell you that their signs say, "I am ready and willing to serve, to grow, and to bear fruit for the glory of God." Thank you all. You can put your signs down. Members of the gathered New Hampshire Conference of the United Church of Christ, you have witnessed with your own eyes these promises of those who have been summoned to serve among us. I now ask our conference president to offer words of covenant with these newly elected on your behalf.
We rejoice in what God is doing through our church. We pledge to move with you into God's future, to grow with you in faith, and to respect and honor your leadership. We pray that you will be found faithful and fruitful so that the New Hampshire Conference may grow and prosper in the work to which God in Christ calls us.
Friends, let us join our hearts and souls together in the spirit of prayer. O God, creator, redeemer, and keeper of us all, You have heard the promises your people have made. Help us to keep these vows, trusting in your mercy and grace. Send your Holy Spirit upon us and upon these elected leaders, that they may serve you with faithfulness and love. May they find great joy and fulfillment in this service. May their leadership help your conference to blossom and bear much fruit, fruit that endures and leads others to hope and trust in you. And at the last, gather us together in the shade, beneath that blessed tree whose leaves bring healing to the nations. We pray in the name of Jesus, who calls us to follow, to serve, and to love. Amen.
Thank you, Gordon. I now call upon the Reverend Dr. David Felton for the recognition of those with new calls in New Hampshire.
The Reverend Robert McKinney, Manchester Bethel Chapel. The Reverend Paul Cullity, Madbury. The Reverend David Jadlocki, Henniker. The Reverend Carlos Jehola Strait, Pelham. The Reverend Richard Malmberg, Walpole. The Reverend John Hogue, North Conway. The Reverend Mary Jane Barber, Hebron. The Reverend Brian Michael Donovan, Salem First Congregational. The Reverend Dr. Catherine Turrentine, Center Harbor. The Reverend Margaret Watson, Newcastle. The Reverend Dr. Peter Lovett, Meredith. Mr. Eric Ekholm, Salisbury. Mr. Jimmy Ray Wilson, Jr., Warner, and the Reverend Sarah Holland, Plymouth.
We will now hear from the Reverend Richard Slater, our Associate Conference Minister, for the recognition of those with significant anniversaries of authorized ministry with standing in an association of our conference. Please note there is also a video posted on the annual meeting webpage with additional information honoring those celebrating their 25th and 50th anniversaries.
Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to lead you in a few minutes of tribute to those authorized ministers in our conference who are celebrating significant ordination anniversaries. As in the past, I will read the names of those celebrating ordination anniversaries from a list that was distributed with the annual meeting materials, with the exception of those celebrating 25 and 50-year anniversaries. I will then read the 25 and 50-year names with a few comments about their ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. Unfortunately, time constraints prevent me from making a more complete presentation about their lives and ministry in this video, but I have created a lengthier and more complete presentation, which is available on our website. So those in 2020 celebrating ordination anniversaries include the following. 5-year ordination anniversaries, Reverend Heidi Heath, Reverend Holly Tomlinson. 10-year anniversaries, Reverend Christine Bowen, Reverend Barry Jacobson, Reverend Tara Olson Allen, Reverend Stephen Silver, Reverend Elizabeth Simmons. 15-year anniversaries, Reverend Veronica Walsh-Don, Reverend Linda High, Reverend Dr. Robert Maroney, Reverend Christopher Owen, Reverend Dr. Deborah Roof, Reverend Nancy Talbot, and Reverend Donna Vielamir. Celebrating 20-year ordination anniversaries are the Reverend Elizabeth French, the Reverend Eric Marian, the Reverend Eric Redard, Reverend Nancy Wood. Celebrating 30 years, Reverend James Berry, Reverend Faye Buttrick, Reverend Gilman Healy. 35 years, Reverend William Beardsley, Reverend Dr. Don Berry, Reverend Edward Coons, Reverend Dr. Elizabeth Nordbeck, Reverend Mark Rideout, Reverend Polly Shammy, Reverend Don Shippey. Celebrating 40 years, Reverend Dr. Kay Bowles, Reverend Martin Copenhaver, Reverend William Donahue, Reverend Francis Hackinson, Reverend Carolyn Kiley. Celebrating 45 years, Reverend Dr. Charles Barnes, Reverend Dr. William Brown, Reverend Alex Gondola, Jr., Reverend Gregory Marshall, Reverend Joseph David Stinson. Celebrating 55-year ordination anniversary, Reverend Alden Blake, the Reverend Dr. William Briggs. Celebrating 60-year, Reverend Dr. Harold Folines, Reverend Dr. Donald Jennings, Reverend Frank Thurston. Celebrating 65 years, Reverend Raymond Hahn. Now to a few words about those celebrating 25-year ordination anniversaries. The Reverend Patricia DuBois was ordained to Christian ministry on February 25, 1995 by the Carol Strafford Association at the New Hampshire Conference. Patricia received her Master of Divinity from Andover Newton Theological School and was ordained at First Church Congregational, United Church of Christ in Rochester, New Hampshire. Patricia served as pastor and teacher of the East Congregational Church in Concord for more than 12 years, and alongside pastoral ministry served as a spiritual director for seminarians and colleagues. Now in retirement, she serves in another pastoral role as an annuitant visitor for the pension boards of the United Church of Christ. Patricia, thank you for 25 years of ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. Reverend Linda Gray was ordained to Christian ministry on June 11, 1995 by the Hillsborough Association of the New Hampshire Conference at the Congregational Church of Hollis, United Church of Christ. She received her theological education at Andover Newton Theological School, which awarded her the Master of Divinity degree. Linda's ministry included serving as Minister of Christian Education at the Congregational Church of Hollis, as pastor of the Union Congregational Church of Madbury, now the Madbury United Church of Christ, and as pastor of the Boscawen Congregational Church, United Church of Christ. Linda now enjoys retirement after years of ministry in the United Church of Christ. Linda, thank you for 25 years of ministry in on behalf of the United Church of Christ. Reverend Susan Andy Jepson was ordained to Christian ministry on May 21, 1995 by the Merrimack Association of the New Hampshire Conference at the Congregational Christian Church in Franklin. Andy trained for ministry at Andover Newton Theological School, which awarded her a Master of Divinity degree in 1993. Andy served as pastor of the Berlin UCC, United Methodist Church, and then turned to interim ministry, serving churches in Franklin, East Concord, Webster, Wilmette, and Bartlett. Her ministry entered another dimension when she was asked to be the transitional associate conference minister and acting conference minister during the reorganization of the conference. Not one to rest on her laurels, Andy went on then to serve as pastor to a group of 5 small churches in Zimbabwe, and then as a mission partner with the Common Global Ministries in Sri Lanka. Now living once again in New Hampshire, Andy serves as interim minister at the Bartlett Congregational Church, United Church of Christ. Andy, thank you for 25 years of ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. Reverend William B. Jones was ordained to Christian ministry on November 12, 1995 by the Metropolitan Boston Association of the Massachusetts Conference at South Congregational Church in Boston. Bill began attending that church when he was a master's degree student studying earth and planetary science at MIT. His call to ministry drew him from science to theology. And in 1995, Bill was awarded a Master of Divinity degree by Andover Newton Theological School. Following ordination, Bill served as Religion and Ecology Director at the Boston Theological Institute, then as pastor of First Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Wellsville, New York. Now serves as pastor and teacher at the Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Gorham. Bill, thank you for 25 years of ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. The Reverend Donna Lee Muse was ordained to the Christian ministry on March 12, 1995 by the Northeast Association of the Massachusetts Conference of the United Church of Christ. Donna studied theology at Andover Newton Theological School, graduating with a Master of Divinity degree in 1994. She served then as Minister of Christian Education at Second Congregational Church, UCC in West Boxford, Mass., as Youth Minister at the First Congregational Church in Georgetown, Mass., as Minister of Christian Education at the Groveland Congregational Church in Groveland, Mass., as pastor of First Parish Federated Church in South Berwick, Maine, as pastor of the First Congregational Church of Croydon, New Hampshire, and now serves as the Bridge Interim Minister at the Stratham Community Church, United Church of Christ in Stratham, New Hampshire. Donna, thank you for 25 years of ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. The Reverend Tanya Stormo Rasmussen was ordained to Christian ministry on July 1, 1995 by the Northern Illinois Conference of the United Methodist Church. Having received her training at Boston University School of Theology, she began her ministry at Our Savior United Methodist Church in Schaumburg, Illinois, followed by pastorates in East Natick, Massachusetts, the Carter Memorial United Methodist Church in Needham, Massachusetts, the Wellesley Village Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Wellesley, Massachusetts, the International Church of Lund in Lund, Sweden, the United Church of Christ in Norwell, Massachusetts, St. Columba's United Reformed Church in Oxford, the United Kingdom, then as Mansfield College chaplain and fellow at Oxford University in the United Kingdom, as pastor of the Wheatley United Reformed Church in the United Kingdom, and the Congregational Church of Hollis in Hollis, New Hampshire, where she is now pastor and teacher. Tanya, thank you for 25 years of ministry and for finding your way to ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. Reverend Dr. Susan Tiroli was ordained to Christian ministry on December 5, 2005. On December 5, 1995, at the Athol Congregational Church by the Central Association of the Massachusetts Conference of the United Church of Christ. Susan trained for ministry at Andover Newton Theological School, which awarded her the Master of Divinity degree in 1994. She later engaged in doctoral studies and was awarded the Doctor of Ministry degree by Andover Newton in 2018. Susan's ministry in the church has taken her to a number of different settings and a number of different capacities as pastor, interim minister, and regional minister. Susan served the Chafin Congregational Church in Holden, Massachusetts, the First Congregational Church of Groton, Massachusetts, the United Church of Putney in Putney, Vermont, the Connecticut Conference of the United Church of Christ, the College Street Congregational Church in Burlington, Vermont, the First Church of Jaffrey, New Hampshire, the Congregational Church of Henniker United Church of Christ in Henniker, New Hampshire, and the Second Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Greenfield, Massachusetts, where she presently serves as interim minister. Thank you, Susan, for 25 years of ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. Turning now to those celebrating 50-year ordination. anniversaries. The Reverend Roger Burkhart was trained for the Christian ministry at Boston University School of Theology, where he received both the STB and the STM degrees. He was ordained to Christian ministry at the Melrose Congregational Church United Church of Christ by the Metropolitan Boston Association of the Massachusetts Conference. Roger served congregations in Melrose, East Boston, Cotuit, Massachusetts, the Union Congregational Church in Union, New Hampshire, the Deer Isle Church in Maine, and the Second Congregational Church in Ossipee, New Hampshire. He also served with the Boston Seamen's Friends Society. Roger, thank you for 50 years of ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. The Reverend David M. Mel Burrows is a graduate of Bates College and Union Theological Seminary in New York City. Mel was ordained to Christian ministry in May of 1970 by the United Methodist Church at its annual conference in Claremont, New Hampshire. His ministry as a pastor began at First United Methodist Church in Methuen, Massachusetts, was followed by ministry at Trinity United Church in Seabrook, Wesley United Methodist Church in Concord, where he served as associate pastor, and at Canterbury United Community Church in Canterbury, New Hampshire, where he was the pastor for some 9 years. Mel, thank you for your 50 years of ministry and for finding your way to the United Church of Christ. The Reverend Dr. James Christensen was ordained to Christian ministry on April 17, 1970 at First Parish Federated Church, South Berwick, Maine, by the York Association of the Maine Conference. Jim studied at both Andover Newton Theological School, receiving his BD in 1970, and then at Bangor Theological Seminary, where he was awarded the Doctor of Ministry degree in 1994. Jim's first pastorate was at First Parish Federated Church in South Berwick, Maine, where he served for more than 25 years. He was then called as pastor at Trinity United Church of Christ in Worcester, Ohio, First Church of Christ in Marblehead, Massachusetts, before coming to the New Hampshire Conference, where he was served as pastor and teacher of the First Congregational Church United Church of Christ in Wolfboro. Jim, thank you for your 50 years of ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. The Reverend Dale Hempen was ordained to Christian ministry on June 28, 1970, by the Central Association of the Illinois Conference at Bethlehem United Church of Christ in Warsaw, Illinois. A graduate of Elmhurst College and Pacific School of Religion, Dale's ministry as pastor and teacher began in Seston, Iowa, continued at Zion United Church of Christ in Burlington, Iowa, before turning to what we call middle judicatory ministry. First, in the Eastern Ohio Association of the Ohio Conference, where he served as association minister, and then Dale came east to serve as area minister in the southeast area of the Massachusetts Conference. After retirement, Dale moved to New Hampshire, and very soon thereafter accepted the position of sabbatical interim conference minister of the New Hampshire Conference, United Church of Christ. Dale, thank you for 50 years of ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. The Reverend Earl W. Miller Jr. was ordained to Christian ministry on June 14, 1970 at the Plainville Christian Church, United Church of Christ in Plainville, New York. Earl studied at Olivet College, Michigan, and Andover Newton Theological School. Earl served as pastor of the Plainville Christian Church in Plainville, New York, the Smith Mills Christian Congregational Church in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, as part-time Protestant chaplain at St. Luke's Hospital in New Bedford, Massachusetts, as pastor of the Center Harbor Congregational Church, United Church of Christ. Earl then served as the interim minister of the Conway Village Congregational Church, visiting preacher at the Union Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Bartlett, New Hampshire, and finally as the interim minister at the Union Congregational Church in Hebron, New Hampshire. Earl, thank you for 50 years of ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. The Reverend Kent Edward Schneider was ordained to Christian ministry on June 8, 1970 by the Chicago Metropolitan Association of the Illinois Conference United Church of Christ. Kent received a Master of Divinity degree from Chicago Theological Seminary. Kent organized and served as the director of the Center for Contemporary Celebration, then became the marketing director for NBC Television in Fort Myers, Florida, served as the associate pastor at Messiah Lutheran Church in Fort Myers, Florida, and as the director of family ministry at Trinity Episcopal Church in New Orleans, Louisiana. After moving to New Hampshire, Kent has brought interim ministry to the congregational churches in Gorham and Farmington and the American Baptist Community Church in Chicorowa. Kent, thank you for 50 years of ministry in and on behalf of the United Church of Christ. And thank you all to all of these ministers for their devotion, for their service, for their deeply meaningful contributions to the life of parishioners, congregations, and to the New Hampshire Conference of the United Church of Christ.
Well, as our annual meeting comes to an adjournment, I want to take a moment to once again thank those who worked as technical support for us today, both James Allen and Tim Griffin, who are the technological wizards who also spent a lot of time and energy to make sure we could all be together electronically today. Thank you, James and Tim. And I also want to thank our tech volunteers. We very much appreciate your willingness to make sure everyone could come online this morning and be a part of annual meeting. Thank you to Reverend Paul Cullity, to Bill Guile, Reverend Jim Howard, Reverend David Keller, Linda Lannon, and Reverend Nancy Talbot, and also to our CART captioner, Denise Garcia. Finally, this has been an extraordinary year in the New Hampshire Conference. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge that there are many people who have worked behind the scenes to bring this annual meeting to you this morning, who have learned new skills and imagined new ways of being together, spending an extraordinary amount of time to make this happen. But in particular, I want to lift up Ann DeRosiers in her work for the conference, who has been tireless and incredible in her can-do spirit and willingness to tackle an unbelievable number of circumstances and obstacles to make sure we could meet this morning. Thank you, Ann. Since there is no further business, the 2020 annual meeting of the New Hampshire Conference United Church of Christ is adjourned. As we continue to discern our calling to repair, restore, renew, I invite you to join us again at 1 p.m. following the lunch break for our keynote address delivered by the Reverend Michael Kane. He would like to share an announcement with us now.
Can you hear me?
We can, yes, and we can see you.
Oh, you can say, thank you very much. Good afternoon, or almost good afternoon, New Hampshire Conference. What a great job you all are doing on this annual meeting. That's not easy, and that's a lot of work. I'm really impressed. I have a favor to ask before my presentation this afternoon. If I could have gotten the permissions, I would have simply played this song for you at the beginning of my presentation, but I admit that I'm still somewhat confounded by copyrights and online worship permissions. So I wanted to do it right, so I don't want to play it for you, but I'm going to ask you if you could possibly, in this break, if you can, watch something for me. Just the first 4 minutes of it. It's Wynton Marsalis's song, I Don't Have a Ghost of a Chance with You. Wynton Marsalis, I Don't Have a Ghost of a Chance with You. If you just type that in a Google in the Google search, you'll get right to the recording I'm trying to have you listen for. It might not sound very churchy. It might sound a little bit of an odd title for the keynoter to ask before his presentation, but it's a glorious piece. If you just listen to the first 4 minutes, I think you'll enjoy it for itself. And I believe it or not, if you can, I think it will help as I launch into what I want to share with you today. So Wynton Marsalis, I don't have a ghost of a chance with you. Have a great lunch, and I'll see you afterwards.
Thank you, Michael. We will keep this webinar up, so if you don't leave the meeting, you should not have to log in again. I now invite the Reverend Gordon Rankin to offer a benediction as we conclude our time together this morning.
Friends, following the benediction, we are going to play you out with a little music by our Horton Center summer staff, one of the songs that they prepared for HC at Home this summer. In our opening devotions, we started with a piece which will be a part of tomorrow's worship, and I want to end with a few words that'll be a part of tomorrow's worship. These are words that Reverend Kane will offer as part of our benediction tomorrow, and I offer them for our benediction this morning. May God guide you continually. May God satisfy your needs in parched places. May God raise you up like springs of water, with waters that never fail. Amen.
And we're gonna sing Kumbaya now, the new style, not the old style one.